The moment I agreed to meet him again, a knot tightened in my stomach. It had been months since we last spoke, and every memory felt like walking on thin ice. I told myself this was just to get some closure, to finally say goodbye properly, but as I sat there waiting, the air was thick with something I couldn't name. When he walked in, his eyes immediately found mine, but there was no warmth, just a cold, calculated stare. I could feel my heart race, a mix of anticipation and dread. The cafe around us buzzed quietly, but in our little corner, time seemed to slow down, every second stretching longer than it should. We started talking, or rather trying to. The words felt heavy, as if they were dragging chains behind them. I tried to stay calm, reminding myself to listen, but every sentence he uttered felt like a jab, twisting old wounds I thought I'd healed. It wasn't long before the cracks showed. His tone sharpened, the sarcasm creeping in like a poison. I remember biting my lip, fighting the urge to snap back, to defend myself, but the exhaustion from years of this toxic dance weighed me down. He accused me of things I hadn't done, twisting facts with such ease that I almost doubted my own memories. The very foundation of what I thought I knew about us was shaking. I could feel my pulse in my ears, every breath shallow and quick. Trying to explain myself only made things worse. It was like pouring water into a bucket full of holes, nothing stayed intact. His eyes flashed with anger, and suddenly the man I once loved was a stranger wielding words like weapons. I wanted to walk away, to leave the past behind and never look back. But here we were, trapped in this toxic cycle. Every attempt to make peace felt like fueling a fire that was already out of control. The cafe's background noise faded, replaced by the pounding of my own heart. My hands trembled slightly as I reached for my coffee, my fingers brushing against his on the table. That small contact sparked a mix of old feelings and fresh pain. He leaned in, voice low but venomous, accusing me again, blaming me for everything that went wrong. His words echoed in my mind long after they left his lips, each one a reminder of how broken we had become. I tried to keep my composure, but tears pricked my eyes. It wasn't just sadness, it was the unbearable weight of disappointment and betrayal. I wanted to scream, to cry, to run, but I stayed, paralyzed by the complexity of emotions. At one point, he laughed bitterly, a sound that felt like nails on a chalkboard. I stared at him, shocked by how far we'd fallen from the person I thought I knew. That laugh was a turning point, no more pretending this was going to end well. I spoke up, my voice trembling but resolute, telling him I couldn't keep reliving the past or fighting battles that had no winners. The silence that followed was deafening, a chasm growing between us that no words could bridge. He scoffed and said something cruel, something that cut deeper than any insult before. I swallowed hard, the taste of bitterness filling my mouth. I realized then that this meeting wasn't about reconciliation, it was a battlefield masked as closure. My mind raced, trying to find a way out of the conversation without making things worse. But the harder I tried to stay calm, the more the toxicity seeped through every sentence, every glance. Around us, people chatted and laughed, oblivious to the emotional storm raging in that small corner. I envied their lightness, their freedom from the chains that bound me to this painful encounter. He suddenly stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. The abrupt movement startled me, and I looked up to see his face twisted in frustration and regret. It was a confusing mix that left me unsettled. Before he walked away, he threw a final accusation over his shoulder, a parting shot meant to wound. I watched him go, my chest tight, tears finally spilling down my cheeks, not from sadness, but from the exhaustion of fighting a war that never seemed to end. I sat there for a long moment, the weight of what had just happened sinking in. The meeting that was supposed to bring peace had only reopened old scars, reminding me of how toxic our relationship really was. As I gathered my things to leave, the rain outside had stopped, but inside me, the storm was far from over. I wasn't sure if I had gained closure or just traded one kind of pain for another. Walking out of the cafe, the cool air hit my face, refreshing yet harsh. I took a deep breath, knowing that this chapter was far from over, and the journey to healing would be longer and more complicated than I'd hoped. The encounter replayed in my mind over the next days, his words, his expressions, the way the atmosphere shifted with every sentence. It was a painful reminder that some wounds don't heal with a single conversation. I realized that toxic relationships aren't just about abuse or anger. They're about the slow erosion of trust and respect, the constant battle between wanting to hold on and needing to let go. Each memory from that meeting felt like a thread unraveling, exposing the tangled mess beneath the surface. It was hard to accept that someone could be both so familiar and so damaging at the same time. Despite the pain, I knew I had to face this reality head-on. Avoiding it only gave the toxicity more room to grow inside me, poisoning my thoughts and emotions like a silent killer. I started writing down everything I remembered from that day, the accusations, the silences, the moments when I almost lost myself. Putting it on paper helped me separate facts from feelings, clarity from confusion. Sharing the story with close friends was both terrifying and liberating. Their support reminded me that I wasn't alone, that healing is possible even when the past feels unbearable. But even with support, the shadows of that meeting lingered. Sometimes I caught myself replaying his words, doubting myself, wondering if I could have done things differently to avoid the fallout. I realized that healing isn't linear. Some days, the pain felt fresh and raw. Other days, I glimpsed hope and strength I didn't know I had. The journey was messy and unpredictable. I found myself setting new boundaries, learning to protect my emotional space like never before. It was uncomfortable at first, but necessary to keep the toxicity at bay. The meeting taught me that not every interaction with someone toxic can end in understanding or peace. Sometimes, the best we can do is survive and learn from the scars. Looking back, I understood why I agreed to that meeting despite my fears. It was a desperate attempt to reclaim control, to rewrite a story that had been written in pain. But the truth is, some stories don't get neat endings. Sometimes they leave us with questions and wounds that take time to heal, if they ever fully do. I started noticing patterns in how toxic relationships unfold, the subtle manipulation, the gaslighting, the endless blame game. Recognizing these signs helped me avoid falling back into old traps. I also learned to listen to my gut more, to trust my instincts when something felt off. That inner voice became my compass in navigating complicated emotions and situations. The meeting that went wrong was a painful lesson in self-preservation, teaching me to choose myself even when it's hard or lonely. Every step forward felt like climbing a steep mountain, but with each breath, I grew stronger, more certain that I deserved peace and respect. Sometimes I wonder if he ever reflects on that day or if he's moved on without looking back. The thought is bitter, but also freeing in a way. I don't have all the answers, and maybe I never will, but sharing this story feels like a step toward healing, a way to connect with others who have been through similar storms. The cafe where it happened still exists, a place filled with memories both good and bad. I haven't been back since that day, unsure if I'm ready to face the ghosts it holds. I keep reminding myself that healing is a process, and it's okay to have setbacks, to feel vulnerable, to ask for help when needed. The scars from toxic relationships aren't just marks of pain, they're symbols of survival, proof that we endured when so much tried to break us. I hope that by sharing my experience, others might find courage to confront their own toxic encounters, to seek help, and to believe in their worth. There's still a long road ahead, filled with uncertainty and challenge, but also with hope and possibility. Sometimes, late at night, I replay the meeting in my mind, not to relive the pain, but to remind myself how far I've come and how much further I can go. I'm learning to forgive myself for the mistakes I made, the times I stayed too long, and the moments I doubted my own value. I'm also learning to forgive him, not to excuse the toxicity, but to free myself from the weight of anger and resentment. The meeting that went wrong wasn't just about what happened between us. It was about what I needed to learn about myself and my boundaries. Each day brings new challenges, but also new chances to heal, grow, and reclaim my life from the shadows of the past. It's not easy, and some days feel impossible, but I hold on to the belief that peace is possible even after the stormiest meetings. For now, I'm focused on moving forward, one step at a time, knowing that my story isn't finished, it's still unfolding. And maybe, one day, I'll look back on that meeting not just as a moment of pain, but as a turning point toward a healthier, happier me.